Alrighty, we are gonna get back on this project. So the other night we ended up pulling the auger off. We pulled the old sump out, got the new sump in there. I'm gonna start putting bolts in that now. We've got the old ones over here on the floor. We've ordered a pile of parts for this. We just need to start bolting this back together. I was gone for a couple of days and now I am back here. This truck, they ended up putting an exhaust on, or a muffler I should say, and they're waiting on a some heat shield brackets. So you're gonna hear some racket over here in next door, and what they are doing is they're just rebuilding alley scrapers. This tractor is still in here. We didn't get the right hose for it, and we should get that here today or tomorrow. Jared's working on this 3406B, and we'll talk about that at a later date. Nathan's putting in a two-way radio. So we'll go ahead and just get some bolts into this, and then we could just slowly start to put this back together. I ordered new augers. I also ordered some metal to put in the bottom of the grain bin. We do have, well, I'll get up in there and I'll show you what that grain bin looks like, but we do have a couple of spots that are real thin on that right hand side, and now is the time to do that. Get the floor fixed rather. So I've got to dig this apart, and that's the unload, the vertical auger, unload gearbox. We need to get new bearings and whatever into that. There's no sense in putting that back on there without it rebuilt. We've got a new vertical auger coming. I don't know how much wear this has. Maybe this isn't wore as much as I'm thinking, but yeah, so we'll just have to see how things go here. But yeah, let's go ahead and get this back together. There's not going to be much that I can show you, but we'll show you some things as we get them bolted back together here. So we'll join up with you when the time is right to actually show you something worthwhile showing. So we've got the combine moved outside. I've got a majority of the bolts in on this actual sump here right now. Now we're waiting for parts, and I just figured that now was the best time of any to just get this auger back on there. We might as well do it in the daylight instead of trying to do this in the dark. So we'll jump up in the bin. We'll do a couple things up in here, and then we'll see if we can't get a couple of the gents here to help us guide this sucker in there. Alright, so we're down inside the bin. There is the sump right there. And then we obviously have the cross augers out of the bin, and we've got some new pieces that we're going to lay in this trough here. And if you look very closely right here, this is paper thin on the back side, and you can kind of see some ripples in the floor on this front side. And then if we go over to this right hand side here, I thought I seen some holes starting to come through here somewhere. Maybe using the back side. Gotta move a lot of this stuff out of the way. Okay, right there. So we've got a spot that is basically broken out right there. So when we get those pieces that lay in here, that'll take care of all of that. We've got some cracks back here as well, which we'll address that when we get to that part of the project. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set a couple of these rings on there. We have the lower ring, which is that one. We'll set that down over the sump. Get that down as far as we can. Then we'll bring the pipe in and we'll try to marry these other pieces together as we go. Now what I did was I took these rings out and I put them on the bench. I ran a wire wheel around them so that they would go down over that sump. And I cleaned up the grease ring on this as well. So we've got 3 grease points. 2 of them were plugged really bad. We cleaned those out. I ran a wire wheel around that. And this here is going to set down on top of this ring. And then we've got an open groove all the way around it for the grease to kind of get mixed into. And then we've got lock collars there. So we'll go ahead and get these rings on there. Bring the auger over and we'll try to get this thing together in the daylight here. Alright, we've got the stationary ring that sets and bolts to the sump. And we've got an attaching bracket here that kind of strengthens this sump for when you bring the auger back and forth here. So we'll go ahead and bring the pipe on over. We'll try to get this in there and then set it down on top of that ring. And hopefully everything kind of goes together the way it's supposed to. It came out kind of hard the other night because we were trying to take it out without separating everything. So once we learned it wasn't going to come out of there, then we separated it all. And originally I took the bolts out. Well, I had all the bolts out of the bottom part. And then we pounded. No, I take that back. We had the bolts out of the sump, but I still had the bolts in the ring that was on top of the sump. So I waited till I got the telehandler on there. Then I thought once I took those bolts out, which I only had a couple of them left, I thought what I could do is just pound the sump down off in there once we've got the pipe up in the air, but there was not enough room to get it out of that area. So we'll have to see if we can't get this in there a little easier than it came out. so we are on our second attempt of reinstalling this auger. Now what we were trying to do initially is we were trying to set the auger tube here down in on the actual bracket that it bolts to, and we just could not get that to seat into place. Probably if we had a new elbow here, we probably could get that to go in there, but we just could not maneuver things good enough to get that mated up together. So we took it off, took it in the shop, took some time to get this cast piece that's going to go down on top of the piece that's on the sump. We bolted that all together. We bolted the piece down on the sump. We originally thought that if we got it in there, we would be able to pick that piece up onto the auger, or set the auger down into it, get everything all lined up, get a couple of bolts in there, and then slowly put it together that way. However, that did not work so good. We were kind of putting it in the way we took it out, and that didn't work. So what we're going to try to do now is set it in there. It's got to be kind of facing that way, and then we've got to turn it because we don't really have the height clearance between in that opening there. It's like 22 inches and we are 29, and we are about 22 here, so we've got maybe just enough room to sneak that in there, turn it, and hopefully we don't drop the auger. We were using choker straps. They don't really give the ability to oscillate the auger at all, so now we've gone to using log chains. Probably gonna put a few scratches in the auger, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and attempt to get this in there for the second time. Okay, so we've got that in there. Fire whistle's going off. Sarge helped me line it up. I had to use a ratchet strap to pull the auger that way. And we have it setting down on the saddle, or down on the ring there that's on top of the actual sump itself. Once I get my ring on there and bolt it all the way around, then we'll put the top on. Now the correct way to do this is have this laying on a 90-degree angle, 90 degrees from where it is right now, with the bottom facing forward. You can sneak it in over the back, and then once you get it in there, turn it. And another thing that you need to have adjustable chains, or make sure you have that so that you're longer on that outside. We kept having to adjust that, and yeah, so we haven't ever taken an auger off before, so now we know. Hopefully we never have to do it again. So we'll get that bolted up, get our top on, and then we'll have to use the telehandler to very carefully let it around to the park position, and we can put our cylinder pin in for the folding and unfolding. It's a little unhandy because we're on a little bit of a hill with the combine, so that's naturally going to want to go back around that way. So, all right. Okay, so we are up in the bin, and then there's these half collar rings that go around the bottom side of the auger, and it kind of clips the upper and the lower slip ring together. So that goes on there, something like this. Of course, it would be flipped around the other way is the way it came off. But what we're going to do, being that we've got a little bit of wear in this, we don't have much, we're going to run it the other way. I probably should get some new ones, but for now we're just going to get these on there, and if I decide to replace them, I can put them on later on, one at a time. So they'll bolt in underneath here, and that will clip the two pieces together, and then we'll put our top piece on. That'll bolt with these 6 bolts right over the top of the auger. So we'll go ahead and get this all fastened, get our top on, and then we'll be just about wrapped up with getting the auger mounted into place. We'll have to put that pin in. I thought I would just fold the auger up and put the pin in over in here somewhere with the auger folded up. We'll just have to pull this cylinder out of the way. So let's go ahead and get this ring into place. Okay, so we have that ring all bolted on there, and then this guy was in here, something like this here. So we've got to get that on there and then push the plate down over the top of this thingamajig here. So yeah, we'll try to get that on there without breaking anything, because if we break something, we're going to have to leave this frickin' telehandler right where it is, and that's not going to be good. So let's see if we can't get this on there without hurting it. out these from the bottom side, tighten them up, and then we'll try to very carefully let that chain down. We'll probably have to maneuver this piece a little bit to get it back to where it was, but there's a lot of pressure on that chain holding that end up a little bit higher than it needs to be. So we'll go ahead and tighten them up and get this wrapped up in here. All right, we have that all bolted down now, and what we're going to do is gonna get them chains off of there, and once we get the chains off, we can just let that auger go back. We'll just kind of let it, we'll just keep a hold of it with a forklift, and we'll just kind of very carefully let it go back into place where it needs to be to hook the cylinder up. Being that we're on a hill, it naturally wants to fall backwards. So we'll go ahead and yeah, get the chains off, get the telehandler out of the way, and just let the forklift creep it backwards. Alright, we've let that auger back there, and it's just kind of sitting there on its own. I took the strap off, but then I originally put it back on because I don't think I've got it pulled that way far enough. And then what I can do is pull it from up in the engine compartment to get the cylinder that is meant to fold and unfold that auger so I can get that pinned. I'll go ahead and climb up in here. I do have to order a new pin for that cylinder. The one that was in there, we beat on a little bit to get it out, and yeah, that we're gonna have to pull that cylinder in some. That cylinder is out a lot farther than I thought. I don't know what happened with that, so we're gonna have to adjust that from the cab. Alright, we've got just a 5/8 bolt down in there. We've got to get the proper pin that is supposed to go in there. We'll go ahead and get this folded back around the way it's supposed to be. And then what we're going to do is pull it in the shop. We've got to bring these grease lines around to that ring, fasten them back to the spot where they're supposed to go. We've got to hook up the wire for the work light on the auger, and we'll put our boot on, and hopefully by then we've got the rest of our parts that we need to work on getting this bin together. We'll have to get this guy swept out and get things ready to start welding into place. We've got a couple of bolts to put back in on that sump, but other than that, we're just kind of waiting for parts now.